Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. It's finally that time. Football season. We're into September. We are post-Labor Day. I promise I will have the Ravens scratch off soon. I still have this pile of Gold Rush 7s doublers that I'm going to be giving away on Wednesday. I'm wearing my Coco's gear. Kicking off the season, Mark Viviano will be joined. That Mark Viviano, the retired one. Yeah, I've lured him out of retirement. It's his first ever appearance on my show. Now, Mark hosted radio on my station years and years ago before the fan started blowing. I think it's the first time I've said that. That's pretty funny. I should have used that all along. It's like Preakness. I'll come up with these things. We'll be at Coco's this week, and then the Crab Cake Tour really kicks off, and the Oyster Tour is kicking off on Thursday with my cousin, John Shields, at Gertrude's down at the BMA. We'll be doing that on Thursday, and I have no idea what kind of oysters she's giving me. I don't know what anybody's going to give me. I do know that for the first time in a long time, since I was a young old man, I'm going to the Peppermill this week. So have that. I'm going to have a proper bowl of oyster stew. Our friends at Liberty Pure Solutions are sending us out on the Oyster Tour to keep our water clean. It's what they do for you. It's what they do for me. Liberty Pure Solutions, my friend Doug, they do it in North Baltimore County, but they do it all over the state. And they keep well water clean, and they keep pipes clean. And then I had a little pipe issue in my bathroom. They came out, took care of my plumbing needs as well. That's Liberty Pure Solutions, as well as Jiffy Lube Multi-Care. Don't need to tell you about that. I'll honk my horn, stop by. By the way, my little yellow lights on. I'm coming to see you over in Timonium. Jiffy Lube, come see me. Luke is busy. As I wrote this week in my Independence Day screed, he is doing double duty all week long. We just went through our work schedule. We just had a work meeting. You want to come on Friday? And you're like, I got practice. It's football season around here, and it's baseball season around here. But we're going to talk some baseball. And I know, come Friday, kind of like the Jimmy Buffett song, come Monday, come Friday, we'll have some football information. But this baseball team, every single day, something kind of goes wrong, right? After everything went right, we know how right felt back in April and May and into June. And boy, I leave you for like 48 hours, and pitchers get contusions and get line drives on the wrist, and other guys get IL'd for the year. And here's Kobe Mayo again. And what the hell happened to Urias? And what a weekend we had there in the thin air of Colorado, now to be home against the lowly White Sox.
Yeah, I mean, some good, some not so good. A series win against the Rockies, and coming home and facing the White Sox, who are so bad. But, the big story over the weekend was Dean Kramer, line drive off the forearm. He's doing better. It doesn't sound like it's a catastrophic kind of injury, but when's he going to make his next start? Brandon Hyde said the other day he'd be surprised if it's, in 5 days, a regular turn. So how are they going to adjust there? And unfortunately, Ramon Urias, who, as you and I have been talking about here in recent weeks, he was their best hitter in the month of August. Sprains his ankle as of Labor Day, still on crutches. I mean, he's going to be out for a while here, and there's really no timetable. So you hear that, you're starting to wonder if it's way more weeks rather than just the 10-day IL period.
Dude, was there any point in May where when they had the 6-man rotation, where I thought, hey, they're pretty healthy? Like, I never thought even Westburg could get hurt. Baseball players don't get hurt. They do, but they don't. It's not like football where we're always crossing our fingers. This has been, by any stretch of any season, good, bad, young, old players, this has been a wild 2 months. It really has been.
It's been difficult. There's no question about it. But look, go look at the Atlanta Braves right now and look at some of the position player talent they've lost long term. It happens. And one thing that Brandon Hyde even addressed before Monday's game as the Orioles came home and beat the tar out of the White Sox was, hey, we were really healthy other than Batista last year. He said we were really healthy the year before that. Sometimes this is how it plays out. And it's
the Markakis thing felt like it was the only thing that went wrong that year. It was the only thing that could go wrong. And it really, I still will look back. If I don't know Nick Markakis, I don't think I've ever met Nick Markakis, honestly. He kind of came in right around when they threw me out. If I ever met him, I always think of him and that season and our night with that giant rat in New York at Yankee Stadium, which feels like a minute ago, but it was 10 years ago. One thing can be a huge difference maker in any of it. And obviously the thing here is Rutschman not hitting the ball right now and the team not hitting the ball. But the injuries will be. And I said this before they had the 2 injuries over the weekend. I said this to you on Friday. I said they already got it built in if they take a facer in 3-4 games next month. I mean, they're not supposed to win the World Series now, as constructed now. They really aren't. I don't think the fan base has changed its sort of expectations of we're great in June to we were great and now we're just kind of slapping along a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think that's a little defeatist though, because who is winning the World Series in the AL, right? I mean, who do you love? Like, who do you think is this amazing team? And when I say
well,
you,
at this moment, their 3 starters could be healthy Burns on target, healthy Rodriguez rested and on target, and Eflin looking like Eflin. And the thing with Kramer, that'd probably be okay by the middle of October. So as defeatist as we are, Westbrook could be bad. I mean,
right.
We could talk about it in those terms of it's a month from now. Think about a month ago. Think about give it a month, let it settle in, let them play these bad teams, let them just get to the finish line, either a game up or a game back on the Yankees. They're going to play big games 2 weeks from now. They have those Yankees games coming up at Yankee Stadium after the Dallas game here in the 3rd week of September. I mean, and to your point all along, I sound like you now. They could stumble into October like Colorado did 30 years ago or Arizona did last year, even Texas a little bit, and just catch fire and just win 2 out of 3 for a couple days. It's all they need to do. They need to win 2 out of 3 in October, 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, and they win the World Series, literally.
Yeah, couple things. I mean, you said a month, and it'd be apropos to mention this. I think back, and it's a different sport, but things can change a lot in a month. And I think back to last Christmas and what the Kansas City Chiefs looked like that day.
Or
what
Joe
the Ravens
Flacco
looked like.
planking.
Right, sure. But I'm talking specifically last year. I mean, Kansas City looked how they looked. And then a month later, they were beating the Ravens on their home field. Ravens looked like the best team in football, had been for weeks. You never know. I mean, that's why they play the games. But I want to go back to something you said, because you mentioned Burns, you mentioned a healthy Grayson Rodriguez. We need to start mentioning Zach Eflin first right now, because what he did on Sunday, albeit I get it, it's the Rockies, but it's still pitching at Coors Field, thin air, coming off of an IL stint with shoulder inflammation. You don't really know what you're going to get. And he was fantastic. He was outstanding in that performance. So I look at this right now, and I'm even going to put Grayson Rodriguez aside for the moment, because again, we don't know, right? We think he's throwing, he's making progress. There's still optimism that he's going to be back later in the month, but it's still going to be later in the month. So you don't know exactly how he's going to look. So even if we put him aside right now, you give me a healthy Zach Eflin, who has been outstanding for the Orioles. You give me Corbin Burns, who was better on Monday. Was it peak Corbin Burns? No, but certainly an improvement over what we'd seen here in recent outings. And Albert Suarez. Let's start calling it what it is. Albert Suarez has been that good. Right now, if the Orioles started a playoff series today, he'd be one of their top 3. I mean, no questions asked. So
he's Venezuelan. You can't let him in. Oh, I'm sorry. That's media, not pitching.
So you just look at that, and then okay, yeah, Grayson Rodriguez. I think they're still optimistic. He can't have any setbacks. That's obvious, right? You don't want him tweaking his hamstring covering first base in a PFP or anything like that. But they're in a position where the rotation looks better than it did a few weeks ago. The bullpen is still a major question, but in fairness, the bullpen the last week to 10 days, it's been better, and they've gotten some decent performances. And even someone like a Gregory Soto has looked better and even closed out the win on Sunday. What wasn't a high leverage situation, but was higher leverage than he'd been pitching. So that's looked a little bit better, and they need to get the bats going. And Monday was a great start in that, and certainly facing the Chicago White Sox helps. Who I'm just astonished, Nestor. We've watched so much bad baseball, specifically the rebuild era of Orioles baseball, and 3, 100, well over 100 lost teams. The White Sox having lost 41 of their last 45 games. It's just, that blows my mind just how bad they are. And this is truly one of those series, and you and I talk about this a lot whenever the Orioles are going up against a bad team. You say, man, you'd really like to sweep. This is one of those series where if they don't sweep and they only get 2 out of 3, it'll kind of feel like a series loss, right? I mean that's how
Well, it
bad
felt
the
like a
White Sox
stumble when
are.
they were losing 2-0 in the first inning, and they're kicking the
Yeah,
ball around again, and
sure.
the fans are all there. And it's a perfect day, and they're finally home, and um, yeah, and it was a giveaway, like all that stuff going on. They answered the bell on Monday,
They
and
did.
quite frankly, they answered the bell with the grand slam last week. There has been they've had moments because I remember last week and a half ago before I left for vacation, I'm like, they haven't had a moment since July 4th. You know what I mean? It felt like they had a walk off, they had a win, they hadn't had a. I hadn't seen them do that or come back, and there had been a lot of bad bullpen efforts in
Right.
addition to a lot of injuries. Just a lot of bad news. The good news comes every day when you look at the standings, though, right? Like, really, that is the saving grace is, yeah, the sky's falling, they're half game out of first place. So, like, the standings help them a lot, and the notion that there is a cavalry where we talked about this forever and ever about cavalries. Like, if what you have now isn't good enough, what's coming over the hill? Well, they have some prosperity coming over the hill that will make them a better baseball team on October the 2nd, 3rd, whatever day they're going to play a month from now. They should be a better team than what they were last week. If that just from a composition standpoint, and dude, Slater, Rivera, these guys that they brought in that always feel like um, an afterthought, and somebody else is paying them in a lot of cases. That could be helpful too. And Mayo coming
Sure.
up and having his wind again, and maybe hitting the ball a little bit. Holidays organized. Things that we would have questioned back in April and May. If we took person by person, player by player, position by position, and had our questions of April and May answered in October, they can still ring the bell in October, right? And I love when I put a status up, people think that I'm down on the team. I'm like, people don't listen to the show. Like, I thought this team was great all year. I think it's tragic that they've had part of the mojo taken away, but I'm not. Lamar's not gone, and they have to play playoff games with Snoop. They're not at that level yet. Now, if they have to
Yeah.
go, they have to go into October, and Dean Kramer's their number one starter. They got problems.
Or if heaven forbid Gunnar Henderson gets hurt or something like that, right? So yeah, I'm with you on that, and I think we need to continue to remember. Like Monday's a great example of it. The Orioles were the first team to 80 wins in the American League. Well, on Monday, early evening. Now the Yankees won later in the day to stay a half game ahead, but you really just have to. I can't stress enough the importance of continuing to look around. And I don't mean that in a sense of scoreboard watching, but I've talked about this a lot as it pertains to the offense, Nestor. We've talked about this for 2 or 3 months. I was talking about this back in April and May, when even back then, certain segments of the fan base, and look, I'm not picking on Orioles fans here. I think it's the same way everywhere. Because our country has become such an NFL football culture as it pertains to sports fandom, I think we lose sight of just how baseball works and understanding that, yes, the Orioles had a very rough month offensively in the month of August, but you still look at their stats compared to a lot of teams out there, it still wasn't that bad. It wasn't as bad as people wanted to make it out to be. And look, when they're only getting 3 or 4 hits in a night, I get it. It's frustrating. Those guys are more frustrated than anyone when that's happening. I asked Brandon Hyde about Adley Rutschman on before Monday's game, and he gave a 2.5 minute long answer talking about the work he's putting in and understanding that he's a catcher. And at times they've got to kind of pull the reins back on him and say, hey, you got a game tonight, right? I mean, so it's not about guys
So
not
those
caring.
bank commercials are real, huh? He's underneath, just catching the 200 balls.
Yeah, yeah, the wall sit or whatever.
Well, I do worry about anytime they start making commercials and they're 21 years old. I get that RG3 Baker Mayfield thing, and I'm thinking, yeah, you're selling a lot of pizza, and you've been in the big leagues a minute and a half, and and you're boring, and you catch the ball, and you're boring, and you're hitting 115 this month. So, like, the commercials can be a little weird in the modern era, I think, and they haven't had star players. Adam Jones never had a commercial. None of them. They haven't had commercials here for players in years because my buddy that gives all the money to Papa John's for that awful pizza, they didn't have a player they could even give the money to. They didn't have a player that ate pizza.
So when you look at all that and you remind yourself that 2024 is not the year of offense in Major League Baseball, and I'll continue to say that. The numbers don't lie, and I get it. The Orioles are up and down and inconsistent at times. That's baseball. Again, whenever I pose this question to people, no one really gives me an answer, and I don't mean you specifically, Nestor, just in general. Say, what offense do you covet? Like, what offense would you want the Orioles to be more like? And sometimes people will mention offenses, and I'm like, they've scored fewer runs than the Orioles this year. So, look, they've got to be better. They know that. You made this point, and I think it's a good one. About 2 weeks ago, we were looking at that stretch of Houston and the Dodgers, a week-long stretch. The Astros clearly have played a lot better. They've seized control of the AL West. I think if there's any team, and I'm going to include the Yankees in there, the Astros are the team. They've got the pedigree. Say what you want about their past and cheating and all that, but they've been there and they've won World Series. They played deep into October. Of this current playoff field, the way it's shaping up to be, they are the team in the AL that has the pedigree, right? But we were talking about that stretch, and we were even saying, I think I even said to you before you departed for your respite, I said, man, we could be talking about a very different story here if the Orioles go 1-6 over that time. And that's where I'm going to stick up for the Orioles a little bit here. As choppy as it's been since late June, and it's been very choppy, they still have not been in a position where they've been so woeful for 3 weeks and suddenly they look up and the Yankees are 6 games up on them and they're clinging to the final wild card spot or something like that. For as much as
They're
we've
still
talked
an
about
11-6, 12-5 football team, right? They're still a very good team. They're still very formidable, and they're still as good as anybody else over 3 games. If they can get 3 of their best starters to the post in the most important games, wherever those games are, wherever they play them, whoever the draw is, I will still take my chances that if they can get Westberg back in the lineup and Holiday's healthy and available and, still a phenom, there's some pile divers in there. Listen, I wrote my screed about you being asked to do double duty and me being locked down. By the way, I do appreciate that WNST got a question in on the baseball manager the other day. But the notion that the team can't win or that there is some negativity in regard to the baseball team not being good enough at this point, this is baseball. The injuries are part of this. Other than the 84 Tigers, I haven't seen anybody just run away. And the Yankees, when they were $100 million better than everybody else, just run away and hide. And the Yankees aren't running away and hiding either. And I think that the interesting point you mentioned is the balance of all of this is that there's not even any super team in the tournament on the other side, right? There's no super team here. It's literally going to be game 1, your pitcher, my pitcher, who's healthy, who's not, where are the shadows, who's going to score 4 runs today instead of 3? Because that's what playoff games are. That's what they always are.
Yeah, and I mean, on the other side of it, I mean, okay, the Dodgers have come on. Arizona's come on. As much as I was really dismissive of the Diamondbacks, and I kept using them as an example because they were so mediocre the first half of the season, they've played really good baseball since then. Padres have played good baseball, but the Dodgers have come on. But your point still stands. I mean, we're not talking about any teams here. At this rate, it's not looking like we're going to have a 100-win team in Major League Baseball this year. So, look, when we say these things, we're also projecting out here, right? You just said it. Some of the guys are going to get back from injury. Now, those guys need to come back and they need to look like themselves. If Jordan Westberg's a 200 hitter coming back the last week of September because he's not 100%, then you don't really have Jordan Westberg back. Same with Danny Coulomb. Go down.
Well, if they get 4 hits in an October game, they're going to lose. Right. You know what I mean? Or unless they win 1-0, but they need to hit the baseball in October.
Course.
Yeah.
Every team does. No. One of the biggest misconceptions, and I've seen people write articles about this, is this constant thing that people say, well, that team's too reliant on the home run. Go look at teams that have won in the postseason in recent years. They've hit home runs. Go look at how many home runs the Texas Rangers hit last year. Look, I'm not saying that's the only way to score runs or that you don't want to be more versatile in how you score runs, but you better be able to hit some home runs because I just don't think you're winning in October if you don't hit home runs.
Well, and this team has the capacity to do that.
And that's
6 out of 9 at bats. Yes.
But they have to be better, right? I mean, Gunnar Henderson has to get back to more the player that he looked like the first half of the season. We've talked at length about Adley Rutschman, and I've asked about Adley Rutschman. And Adley Rutschman on Monday got on base 3 times. Now, do I think that means he's fixed? Well, check back with me in a week. Check back with me in 2 weeks. We need to see a better version of Corbin Burns on the pitching side. And yes, it was better on Monday, albeit against the Chicago White Sox. They need Zach Eflin's shoulder to continue to feel good, and so he could pitch like he did on Sunday, which was fantastic. So yes, there are questions. Yes, there are warts. Yes, the injuries are such a big part of this. There's no doubt about that. Kyle Bradish isn't walking through that door, and the same with John Means, and the same with Tyler Wells, even though I saw Tyler Wells and John Means in the clubhouse, and was good to see them, but you know that they're not pitching in 2024. So yes, there's so much attrition that they've dealt with, and that's part of it. It's not an excuse. It's literally part of their reality, right? I mean, to ignore it is, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, it'd be like saying, why aren't the Ravens winning when Tyler Huntley's at quarterback rather than Lamar Jackson? It's like, what do you expect? So again, as we've said, it's baseball. You let it play out. Yes, this team's been mediocre since late June. At the same time, while we've talked about the fact that they haven't won 3 in a row since coming out of the All-Star break, they won the last game against the Yankees, had the break, and then they won 2 in Arlington. That's the last time they won 3 in a row. However, they also haven't lost 3 in a row since, I think, July 24th through the 26th, something like that. Point is, they haven't, for all the injuries they've had, for all the mediocrity that we've talked about, for all the pitching concerns and flat out woeful stretches of pitching that they've had over the last 2 months, they've still hovered right around where they are right now, which is 20, 21 games over 500. They've dropped down to 19 or 18 at a couple points, but they've kept themselves in position where, they're a 92, 93, 94 win team, which is not last year. I get that, right? It's not 101 wins. It's not 106 or 7 like they were on the pace to do in late June, but it's still right there. And as I said, as they come out of Labor Day, they and the Yankees are the only 2 teams in the AL with 80 wins. And I'm not saying throw a parade, but it just means who are the dominant teams? We can go through every single contender in the AL right now, and they have question marks. I mean, even the Astros, who I just mentioned, Kyle Tucker, Alex Bregman, their health. I mean, they've lost guys over the course of the year. I'm not saying the Orioles are going to be the favorite. I'm not saying the Orioles are going to look like the best team going into October or aren't going to have question marks even when they get some of these guys back, because I still have my major doubts about their bullpen, for example. But let it play out. See if they can get themselves healthy. My goodness, you can't lose anyone else to injury at this point. And if that happens, now we're talking about whether that person's coming back. As I mentioned, Ramon Arias, who's still on crutches. But, we'll see how this plays out. We know their schedule until they play the Yankees. When we're heading into the final month or final week of the regular season, their schedule is very favorable on paper. Let's see what they do. I'm not expecting them to go nuts, but I certainly fully expect them to, 1, hold on to a playoff spot at the very least, and 2, I think the Yankees are a lot like the Orioles in the sense that I don't think they're good enough that they're going to run away with it, even if they end up taking the division. I think the Orioles are going to stay right there with them. So let's see how it plays out. Let's keep in mind, this is also supposed to be fun. For as much as it's felt not so fun the last couple months, they're still right there. Everything is still in front of them as far as what they're capable of potentially doing. They need to get healthy. They need guys their stars to start playing like stars again. And if they do that, then hey, Buck Showalter always used to say, it's all about getting October and then you roll the dice and you see who gets hot. And at this point, I don't know who that hot team is in the AL. So let's see it play out. And to your point, things could look a lot different a month from now as we're talking about the Orioles getting ready to play October baseball.
We'll get to the bullpen in a minute. We got a lot of football to talk about. Luke's going to be covering the game on Thursday night. We have full coverage all week long, as we've always done here from the very beginning, whether we have access or not. And I've written about that, and I'll continue to write about that. Eric DeCosta's getting a love letter from me this week that he'll love in advance of the Pearl Jam show next week as well. I'll just say this before we break, because I want to do bullpen with you, and we'll talk some more baseball for sure. We're going to mix in some Ravens, get some Chiefs in here. Barry Bloom's going to join us this week. Matt Skura came on to talk about Joe Delisandris and his loss and the importance of offensive line. He's doing well down in Charlotte. So we got a lot of things going on here. I'll just say this about Monday, and I'll probably begin with this when we talk about pitching. But Monday, I'm watching the game on TV because that's how I watch it. You were at the game because that's how you watch it. Looked like a lovely day. I didn't know anything about the giveaway and the lines and all that. when the game started, it felt like a playoff game. I looked at it on TV, and the shadows were weird because it was a 3:00 game. I looked at it, and where the shadows were with the pitchers in the box, I'm like, it looks like playoff baseball, like the time of it. And then the vibe when Burns took the ball, the first couple of pitches, like it. And then it went to poop because they gave up a couple runs and threw the ball around. But it had a little pepper, did it not? Or am I nuts on Monday? It felt that on TV.
It was a nice atmosphere, and I'll tell you another recent game. I mean, and it sounds kind of funny to say it, but that Santander Grand Slam game against Houston, the Orioles gave fans nothing to cheer about over the first 6-7 innings of that ball game until, of course, the big blow in the 8th inning. The crowd was electric that night. I mean, has it been a sellout every night? No, of course not. And they had 35,000 there on. It's a nice crowd, but it doesn't look that way because they don't open the left field upper deck, right? So
those are the free the bird seats. So they'll be the first ones that are going to be gone once they.
But no, you said it. I mean, it was a nice atmosphere, and you can tell, again, how many people in the stands on a given night, and school's back in session, all that. I'll hear all that, right? But for the fans that are there, good atmosphere. It was a fun day. Way easier playing the Chicago White Sox than anyone else right now. I mean, my goodness, I can't stress that enough. That team is. I've watched a lot of bad baseball going back to 2018 specifically, but boy, that is just another element. And the Orioles acted accordingly after a slow start and win 13-3. But yeah, it was a fun day. It was a giveaway, all of that, but.
I feel bad for Larry Sheets' kid, to be honest with you, sitting there next to Cal. Poor guy.
Hey, he's one of the few legit major leaguers they have, right? I mean, he is, and he swung the bat well against the Orioles on Monday. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a good day for Orioles fans, and nice to see the Orioles come home on a high note after winning the series in Colorado. So, up and down over the weekend with the injuries and all that. Also got Zach Eflin back. Jacob Webb started a rehab assignment, so some positives as well, but yeah, we're down to what? We're down to under 30 games to go, so it's go time. It's sprint time, and the Orioles are hoping to get some guys back here. But most of those guys, I'll just point this out, and I'll leave you with this. Most of those guys still talking about the second half of September, so it's still going to be a couple weeks for some of these guys, which just means it's even more important for none of these guys to have any setbacks.
I had Larry Sheets on my Stratomatic team back in '87 and '88. You don't remember Larry Sheets, do you? Like, you always feel like you're as old as me because you're like smart and wisdom and all that, and you have books, but you don't remember Larry Sheets. You were like you were a little tyke. Was he your favorite Oriole in 1987 when you were 4?
I mean, no, I remember Larry Sheets. Like,
I see you more as an Oswaldo Peraza guy.
No, but I remember Larry Sheets.
Yeah. I never met Larry Sheets, which is even crazier. I've never had Larry Sheets on my show, which is crazy. It was weird.
I've said this to you though. My wheelhouse where I really consciously really start remembering day-to-day baseball is right around 89, 90. When I was 6, 7 years old. I have memories before that, but that's when I remember day-to-day following.
Randy Milligan, you remember the Devereaux play?
Milligan,
you remember
Devereaux percentage?
Devereaux Memorial Stadium. You remember that? The foul ball, fair ball.
Yes.
So you remember that one? Okay, that's good. That's a mark of delineation that Joe Enoch will appreciate if he hears this piece. He's Luke. I'm Nestor. We're going to continue baseball, football, baseball, Ravens, Orioles. Television, at the practices. He's Luke. I'm Nestor. We're WNST. Stay with us.